It is time to talk a little CFL. We'll be joined momentarily by Chris Schultz of TSN's CFL and NFL coverage. Mr. Mokan, excited for the season?
I definitely am. It's Friday Night Football is the staple of TSN, of course.
Wendy's Friday Night
Football. And, of course, two big games to kick off the year. A lot of intriguing storylines going into week one of the CFL season.
And maybe this is the year we find out when Ottawa's back.
Kohan spoke about it today.
And?
He's hoping 2014. Hoping 2014. Hoping.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what I can liken it to, but it's getting kind of funny every year. It's kind of like Norm Peterson's wife on Cheers, right? Vera, you never saw her. You kind of hear things. In any event, let's bring in from TSN's coverage of the CFL. You can also follow him on twitter.com/Chris Schultz TSN. We welcome in Chris Schultz. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Gentlemen, good evening.
Thank you so much for taking some time. I'm sure it's a busy time of the year. Ramping up for you?
A little bit. We've been doing this now for a little while, so we all kind of have our own little preparation cycle that we go through and how we each prepare. And, a lot of it just has to do with making sure you're reading everything, you're listening to everything, you're reviewing everything. And, you go to the press conferences and you just try to do the best job you possibly can in terms of following the league. So hopefully when you're on TV, you can come up with something intelligent and interesting and sometimes entertaining to say. But, yeah, this is the time that, as you say, you take it serious. It's your job, and you want to perform, and you want to do well.
Is this the year we finally see 4 competitive teams in the Eastern Division?
Logic says so. I don't know the health situation with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers because they may have lost Chris Garrett to an Achilles injury. So that's the latest rumor, and if that's going to hurt their chances and their opportunities. It's an interesting division. I do think that the Alouettes are going to come back with a vengeance because they got something to prove. And previous years they had nothing to prove because they were Grey Cup champions. And in the fantasy world of how would you want to end your career, Anthony Calvillo could end his career at 39, 40 years old, playing in Grey Cup number 100. And if he were to win that would be just about storybook perfect to a really classy gentleman. So I think Montreal's going to be good. Toronto, I believe will eventually be good. It'll take them a while to assimilate a new offense, a new defense. Winnipeg, up and down. Last year they were 7-1, and then they didn't play very well in the last 2/3 of the season, so they got a little way to go. I think the wild card's Hamilton, and Henry's looked great in terms of the offseason, his leadership, his enthusiasm. They got great receivers. I think the key for them is can they find 2 good defensive ends and solidify the secondary because they may be starting a couple rookies, and that's always sometimes a risk-reward ratio. You got the rookie youth and the rookie legs, but you have the rookie inexperience and the rookie mental errors.
Chris Schultz joining us from TSN's CFL coverage as, of course, the season gets underway later on this week. But Chris, I wanted to get your thoughts on the recent, not controversial, but interesting signing by the Montreal Alouettes. They go out and get the 5th overall pick from Calgary, the Montreal native, in fact, Amit Paul. Your thoughts on their maneuvering and bringing in a Canadian, which is just so important, of course, for the ratio.
Yeah, he's a talent. He really is. He's not a physical specimen in terms of his height and his weight, but he's a great burst player. He's a great quickness. He can play special teams. He can be an outside pass rusher. There's a lot of things you can do with him at Paul. And basically, they offered him the opportunity to be on the practice roster, and he said no, which makes him a free agent. And there is a code of ethics and there is a code of honor that teams kind of not necessarily ignore other talent, but they have a certain amount of respectability. So was it illegal for what Montreal did? No, not at all. If you see a player out there and you can grab that player, and it's through the rules of the Canadian Football League that everyone is very concisely and perfectly aware of, then if you want to make your football team a little bit better by picking up a certain kid, that's what you do. So I don't see anything wrong with it. There's controversy, in player transactions, in all different ways. The Ricky Ray trade had a controversy. Chris Jones, as a defensive coordinator from Calgary, going to Toronto, had some controversy. So those type of storylines, they're going to be around for as long as the sport is going to be around because you got a lot of bodies, a lot of positions, and you got to find players.
Hi, Chris. It's Mo Conner, your coffee guy.
Hello, Mo. How are you, buddy?
Doing very well, and you?
Good.
Excellent. Chris, looking at the West Division and seeing how it's going to play out, for me right now, I see Saskatchewan being that wild card team. Of course, we were there for the CFL draft and how well they did. And given how they fortified their offensive line, do you think they can make a deep run or make a run at one of the 3 playoff spots in the West Division?
Well, they have to, because for them to finish in 4th place 2 years in a row could be very detrimental to the enthusiasm of that fan base. And they're going to give Corey Chamblin a couple years, and he's going to have his opportunity to turn it around, but they got to make the playoffs. Good things in terms of solidifying their offensive line. Dominic Picard and Ben Heenan has gotten great reviews as a young player that stepped in and is filling, and he's actually playing Brendan Labatt. They're going to be okay, and they're going to be improved in terms of protecting Darian Durant. For Darian Durant, it's a big year, Mo. I mean, he's coming off 2 good years followed by a very bad year, and this has got to be a good year. I think the key for them is the 2 pass-rushing defensive ends, Brent Hawkins and Adele Willis, and getting their system down as fast as they can. And, Corey Chamblin's a young coach and someone who hasn't, this will be his first game come Friday night that he's standing on the sidelines. And don't think he isn't nervous either. I think, once again, you're going to see them progress. I think Hamilton is the team that has the opportunity to get, win number 1 based on the experience of George Cortez with, Henry Burris and the previous lives together, winning a Grey Cup in 2008 together. But I don't think Saskatchewan has the opportunity this year to be a dominant team. I do think they have the opportunity to be a competitive team.
Looking at BC and Calgary, 2 teams that have been, I guess, the cream of the crop of the West Division for the last couple of years at least. What do you foresee playing out with these 2 teams? Of course, Calgary somewhat going through a change, going from older guys to a younger generation of players, and BC being the defending Grey Cup champions.
Well, first of all, BC is the best team in the league, and I think in terms of their personnel, they may be better right now than when they actually won the Grey Cup last year. I thought for sure they'd lose Javon Olafoye. I thought for sure they'd lose Khalif Mitchell. Free agency, they picked up a cornerback. They picked up a defensive back, Len J. Shell, a cornerback, and Byron Parker. They still do have Olafoye. They still do have Khalif Mitchell. And I think the timing of when Wally Buono stepped down, I thought it was a very unselfish move for Buono because, he'd have an opportunity to be Canadian head coach coaching in Toronto in the 100th Grey Cup. But instead, he's stepping away, and Mike Benavides has that opportunity as a Canadian. I think that team is about as polished and as well put together as any team in the league right now. And they've also got Montreal's number. Montreal does not go up to BC and have any form of any success on a consistent basis. Calgary, I don't know. Drew Tate, he had 3 very good games, but if you remember that first game in the West Final, very average. So average that they had to put Henry Burris in the second half just to try to salvage a win, and that didn't work out. So I still think he's a work in progress, but they got 2 good running backs, John Corrish and LaMarcus Coker. They're a little bit younger now because it looks like Kenyon Rambo eventually will sign with the Toronto Argonauts. But I still think they're a little bit up in the air, and they lost their defensive coordinator, Chris Jones, to Toronto. So I don't know so much about them. And then Edmonton, guys, that's the funny one. And they are rolling a dice. And, Eric Tillman he's right now, he's in Las Vegas. And he's saying, I have the ability and I have the luck that I'll balance my salary cap out and I'll get 1 or 2 more players for the value of the Ricky Ray. And he's pretty determined to turn this around. A lot of it will depend on Stephen Giles, but when you look at who won and who lost in that trade between the Edmonton Eskimos and Toronto Argonauts won.
Chris Schultz joining us here on Game Points with Matthew Ross. Of course, so you can follow him on Twitter.com/Chris Schultz TSN. You getting the hang of the Twitter thing?
Not so good. I'm still, at least a decade behind in my advancement of technology, but, day by day. And when I have problems, I do ask questions. So I know it's not a complicated issue. I'm just an uneducated citizen.
Keep learning because we need you. We need your content on Twitter for CFL, my friend. We really do. We want that stuff out there. Good luck the rest of the way for the CFL coverage. We also, of course, look forward to your NFL thoughts as well in the fall. Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Anytime.
All right, take care. There you go. That's Chris Schultz from TSN.